In January 2020, I went to Dunedin to meet with Annalise and Ken Young. Ken and I went to Oamaru, the kingdom by the sea, to visit Janet's childhood home, and we spent a lot of time trying to find her grave. And finally, we went to the site of the Seacliff Mental Asylum. Not much remains physically of that place. Some concrete foundations and a few walls still stand, but the atmosphere is eerie and disturbing, quite awful. Both Ken and I could barely speak a word after walking around, soaking in the horrors that took place there. That trip in January cemented our decision for the opera to be set in Dunedin. So immediately that narrowed down which aspect of Janet's life would be the focus for the story. Janet had a huge, full life, and to tell the whole story would have taken several operas. As I was writing the libretto, I was intrigued by day-to-day life in a mental hospital at that time, and I read a lot of accounts from nurses who had worked in such places, including Seacliff, in the 1950s. I also wondered about the backgrounds of the women and what would make them choose nursing, not that they had many choices beyond teaching and staying at home with children. It was a very early decision of mine to make our Janet a supporting character in the opera. I never met the real Janet Frame, and the last thing I wanted to do was to assume what she may or may not have said or sung. I have enormous respect for her and her legacy, and to mess around with a real person just didn't sit that well with me. But with a truly fictitious character, like the nurse Catherine, played by Annalise, you have absolute artistic license, and I was able to create someone from scratch. That was pretty thrilling. And I loved it when Ken Young or Anna would ask me, why does Catherine say this? What happened to her to make her say this? And I could build an entire backstory for her. As for the character of Janet, she's just trying to survive in this place. The real Janet Frame lent more towards introvert than extrovert in personality. So it made sense that the rich lyric voice of Annalise would better suit Nurse Catherine, and Jane Tankersley, with her background in early music, would vocally suit our Janet. I wanted Janet and Catherine's text to feel as natural as it can be when someone is singing the words. Janet's text in particular is very natural and concise, not flowery or dramatic. For Catherine, I adopted quite a flowing way of writing, like a stream of consciousness, which suited her character, as she is someone constantly switching between living in the past and living in the moment. In the case of The Strangest of Angels, this was the first time in my life when I wrote the words first and then handed the work to the composer. Because normally I'm trying to fit my text into the existing rhythms of Mozart or Donizetti or whoever. And I couldn't believe it when several months after I had submitted the completed libretto to Ken, the piano score just miraculously appeared in my inbox, and I was able to sit at the piano and sing through the whole opera and realize that he hadn't changed a word that I'd written. When we were rehearsing in Christchurch for the premiere, there were some further changes. Again, just so subtle. For example, Catherine says, did they shock her into madness? And we changed it to, did we shock her into madness? Now, this is a small change, but it had a huge impact on the character and played into that guilt that she's feeling around being a passive witness to the torture that Janet is experiencing through ECT. My involvement in The Strangest of Angels was pretty unorthodox for a librettist. Ordinarily, you write the piece, hand it over, and then you're never seen or heard from again. Your contribution is complete. And this just wasn't the case with The Strangest of Angels. It was always a team effort. Right from the very beginning, we were all a part of it and made to feel valued and included in the process of creating this work. This piece, is just different from anything else that I'll ever do. An absolute career highlight and an honour to have been involved.